Well, you saw the competition several weeks ago. Now you get to meet the drivers. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Scott. Welcome to Forging the Crown. Kodi Cosford is joining us alongside. And Kodi, first of all, thanks for taking some time out of your day. And I'm sure this long break that we've had between Silverstone and now Fuji is really getting you back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, it's a nice little break to focus on the next round. We've got the Daytona 24-hour in between, so practicing for that, and then once we've finished that, then we'll be focusing on Fuji again.
Yeah, we'll talk about your other racing exploits a little bit later on. We'll also touch on Silverstone and preview Fuji, but I want to talk a little bit about you. It's kind of neat to see some of the pictures that you've had. You actually started a little young in sim racing, not as young as some drivers I've seen, but long story short, you started at the age of 14, if I recognize correctly.
Yeah, so basically I started with a Project Cars 2 just on the Xbox with a controller. Just wanted to, I always loved racing games, so I just wanted to have some fun. I didn't even know what sim racing was back then. I just loved racing and didn't really see it as something I'd ever be able to attain with it being so expensive to get into. And then I started a wee car cleaning business, and that allowed me to get a racing wheel, my first one. So I started doing a few of the Xbox leagues in 2020, it was. Eventually started getting good in the Xbox leagues, won 5 championships back to back. And then as I was going through the Xbox leagues, I wanted to move up into PC. So I saved for a while because gaming computers are quite expensive to get into. So saved up for a while and then moved into PC. And then that's when I really got involved in the world of esports and joined Ballas Esports originally. And from there, it's just really grown into karting, into real car racing, and some more sim racing as well. So just focusing at the moment on trying to grow the real racing side of things, but also keeping up my skills on the sim racing, esports, and things like that as well.
Well, of course, a lot of people, they focus hyper on sim racing, but it's not all sim. You actually live in what I consider one of the most beautiful parts of the world, over the Isles, of course, across the pond here in the United States.
Yeah, so I live near Scot. I live in Scotland. Sorry, it's actually really nice location. There's a lot of hills and mountains and things like that, so it's really nice for scenery. The weather isn't always great, but you get used to it eventually. But it's also good for the racing because there is a lot, especially on the karting side. There's a lot of tracks near Scotland and around England, so I don't have to travel far for a lot of the different tracks that I can go and race.
Well, it also helps that you have, such great racing heritage in and of itself. You have Dario Franchitti, the Franchittis to begin with, and DiRestas. They are really a part of it, and the history with Scottish racing in and of itself is absolutely splendid.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of Scottish drivers, and even ones like David Coulthard was Scottish as well. So there's a lot of very top level racing drivers that come from around here as well. So it's really nice. Even Jim Clark, for example, his museum isn't far from my house either.
Yeah, I've had seen some things, obviously, in the IndyCar circles with seeing Dario Franchitti going and being a part of that. So I know a lot about that, and it's actually something I want to go visit sometime. But it's not all racing that you worry about. You also do flying some model airplanes as well.
Yeah, so to take a break from esports and things like that, because the racing is I enjoy it, it's fun, but it's very competitive, so it's become more than just a hobby for me. So I like to fly radio controlled stuff on the weekends, just when I'm not racing, just to relax, so I have something to take a break from the racing when I need it.
And you're talking about the karting championships. You mentioned that it's a very full over there, but there's also the indoor karting championship, something that not many countries have because it's usually just one company that runs it. But what is the indoor championship like?
Yeah, so I got into that straight from sim racing. So that was my first experience racing competitively in something that wasn't a simulator. So in 2023, in I think it was around about July, I saw an advert for British Indoor Karting Championship, who will be the next champion or something like that. So I did a bit of research and found that there was a track less than an hour from my house. So I went across. There was 3 months of qualifiers. So you had 3 months to do three hot laps basically, and that qualified you for the local round. So it was basically my first time doing anything competitively in a go kart. So I wasn't sure how I would perform, but I got into the local round. Got I think it was P3 in locals, and then I went to regionals. So it was all the regional tracks from Scotland. So Team Sport have, I think it's something like 50 tracks in the UK. So all the Scottish ones compete for the regional title. So obviously, being my first championship, I really had no idea what to expect. It was my first time going away for a racing weekend, so limited practice, wasn't sure how it would go, but ended up winning the first heat by 20 seconds, which was just insane. It was an 8 minute sprint. It was cold, very slippery track, and what I learned in the sim on low grip conditions just transferred perfectly to the go karts, and I was able to replicate that. And then the heat after that, I also won by 10 seconds. Then you have a semi final, and then you have a final. So I came P2 in the final race. So I went to the Nationals, which there's over 5,000 people that did it in 2023. So I was in the top 32 for the national championship, and that was down in Warrington. So it's a two-story indoor track, extremely bumpy, but very rewarding when you get it right. I think it's about 1,000 meters long, that track, so it's a very large indoor track. I didn't perform particularly well in the national final, but just to get to the top 32 in the country for my first experience in something real after the simulator was incredible. So I've gone again in 2024 and 2025. Not done as well as I did in 2023, just with some uh, drivers taking me out and stuff like that. But I still try and do it every year just because it's a really nice championship to get involved in.
And you mentioned the two level go kart track, which I think is quite interesting. I know there's maybe like one or two here in the States, but that's got to be something different because normally you don't get to race two level anything in motorsport.
Yeah, so indoor go-karting, for example, the Newcastle one, which was for the regional rounds of 2023, that was concrete on the bottom, but it was polished concrete, so it was super slippy because it was fresh. And then it was polished wood on the top level. So you had two different surfaces. So that was very interesting, and it tested a lot of drivers. A lot of drivers struggled with it because especially when you were going down from the top level to the bottom level, you were suddenly with a lot less grip. And then when you went back up to the top, suddenly you had way more grip. And then for the Warrington, for the national final, it's held there every year. On the upstairs, it's polished wood, and downstairs, it's tarmac and polished concrete. So you have three different surfaces across three different parts of the track. So it makes it exciting, but it's also very challenging because your car is going to have different levels of grip on different parts of the track.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about this past couple of years in your journey outside of karting. You know, looking at your background, you have a lot of trophies, you have a lot of different medals as well. What has it been like knowing that you're one of the top racers in the globe to be able to achieve a lot of what you've done so far?
To be honest, when I was younger, I didn't think it would be possible. I don't come from a rich family, so a lot of the time when you look at racing, it's very difficult to get into it unless you have a big sponsor or something like that behind you. But all my life, I've been very, very stubborn. If I want to achieve something, I will work until I achieve it. Even if I fail, I'll just keep going and just learn from it and find another way. So I think it's taken a while. It's taken a number of years to get to this point. But when I look back, I'm just really happy and proud of what I've achieved already. Going from simulators to then karting and then real car racing and continuing on that path is really incredible when I look back.
Let's talk about Silverstone. Ninth place finish. First of all, what did you expect going into this round?
Well, going into Silverstone, it wasn't one of my favourite car and track combos at Silverstone. Even though it's my home track, I don't particularly drive it a lot. So my focus was let's get a top 10 to start the season well. And going into qualifying, I think I started P11 or P12. I invalidated my good quali lap, but I knew that it's a long race, keep my head calm, and I'll be able to make up a couple positions. Had a few really nice battles with Alexander Pollock and a few of the other drivers. And then the strategy call was a bit off. I took a little bit too little fuel. And unfortunately, I didn't realize until right near the end of the race. So for the second part of the stint, I was pushing really hard to try and extend the gap as much as possible. And then with 4 laps left, I realized that I had 3.5 laps of fuel. So I knew that it was going to be very difficult to even get to the line. So I fuel saved massively, and thankfully there was a little bit of an incident behind me, which gave me even a bigger gap. And then going into the final chicane at Silverstone, the engine cut out because I ran out of fuel. But thankfully, I was able to just roll to the finish line. And one of the drivers got a penalty for an incident count, I think it was. So I still finished P9 after the penalties. So a really good start to the season.
Really is. And I was going to say, with the pit stops, it's not often that you see these sprint races that have these pit stops. So I think that adds a little bit of extra complexity in the strategy of when you need to pit and where you need to pit, because now you're talking about the overcut, undercut. So with it being a sprint race, how hard is it to get through and realize where you need to pit?
Yeah, so with a sprint race, because it's such a short race, we don't change the tires. It's only the fuel. But you do have the issue that when you go into the pits, the tires are going to cool down. So you have to decide where you are on track if an over or an undercut's going to be better. So if I'm in a pack of cars and they're slower than I am, then I might go into the pits slightly earlier because even though I'll come out on cold tires, I'll be able to push because I won't have anyone in front of me. And that might allow me to then end up in front of them once they've pitted. Also, the fuel load itself. Some of the cars have different amounts of fuel that they can put in, and what that means is some cars will need to fuel save more than others. So you have to balance between either fuel saving so you can take less fuel at the pit stop, which means your pit stop will be shorter, or pushing but taking more fuel and a longer pit stop. So it's really nice to bring in that extra strategy instead of just having a 1 hour sprint race.
It really is, because I've called a couple of races like that, and it makes life a little bit more interesting. Now, the next question is, you have your choice of car. Why did you choose specifically the Ferrari?
Personally, I don't have much GT3 experience at all, and the Ferrari was just a car that was quite comfortable for myself to drive. It suited my driving style when I was testing it. So that's really all the thought process I put into it was just testing a few of the cars which felt the best, and the Ferrari just felt really nice, so I decided to go with that.
All right, let's talk about Fuji, the next round out. We're just a couple of weeks away from the running of that track. What are your thoughts going into it, first of all?
I think Fuji will be interesting. I think it will be a case of picking your friends and enemies quite early on in the race. There's obviously a very long main straight. So if you choose to stick behind someone, you're going to gain a bit of an advantage because you can tuck into that slipstream. But it's also got a lot of overtaking opportunities. So I think especially the first few laps are going to be quite exciting. So I think it's going to be important to save the tires because I think especially early on in the race, a lot of people may burn up the tires, especially with all the hairpins and stuff like that. You've got a lot of traction zones and really heavy braking zones, but I think it will make for an exciting round too.
Now, you mentioned also that next week you'll be participating in the Daytona 24-hour event. It's a special event that iRacing holds every year. Talk a little bit about that and how that's going to prepare you for the next round. Although they're two different tracks, but there's a lot of great competition that's going to be running in each split.
Yeah, so Daytona will be really good for consistency practice because it's a 24-hour race. The pace isn't as important as the consistency. If you're the fastest car on track, but you crash into the wall and you're in the pits for 10 minutes, you're going to lose to a team that's half a second slower than you, but doesn't crash the entire race. So the consistency is really good because it helps you prepare for the shorter sprint races as well, to be able to knock in those laps, lap after lap. But it's also a really important for the strategy with it being such a long race. So I really enjoy the 24-hour races, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Kodi, thanks for joining us here on Forging the Crown, the first one. And it's very interesting how this series is run. I thoroughly enjoy it. And I know a lot of the fans want to find out how to follow you on social media. What's the best way they can?
Yeah, so I have a Instagram, Cool Shark Racer underscore, and I also have a YouTube channel, Cool Shark Racing. So I post my sim racing, I post real racing, and also karting on there as well. So if you want to see that and keep up to date with that, that's probably the two best places for it.
Well, Kodi, thanks for joining us. Good luck at Fuji, and we'll see what happens, and maybe we'll get to talk to you at the podium.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
And for Forging the Crown, my name is Jeremy Scott. We'll see you next time.